direction of taking the justice circles and moving into a place where we're connected and unsiloed, as I like to say, and joining together in ministry. So I looked for a prayer that captured that theme. It actually comes from a UU sister who wrote it, and I felt it really, I don't know, it just spoke to me. So I'm going to share it with you. It's just titled A Prayer for Reconciliation. We gather with a hunger for reconciliation. What is done cannot be undone. What is done next must now be done with care. We gather because we're hopeful, because we have visions and dreams of a brighter future. That there may be more than vision in this room. These are the wounds we must heal together. Grief and anger for all that has been lost. Guilt or fear in their reliving. Pain that has gone without sufficient comfort. Mistrust that was earned, that continues burning still. Every injury we may have named and yet still carry. Those we haven't, can't, or dare not speak aloud. Those we're not ready to make public. Those still not recognized, accepted, and understood. These are the wounds that seek replacement, not cancellation or denial. Wounds we tend cautiously, apply the salve of understanding, forming scars that mark our history, without disfiguring the future we might share. This is not a time of quick solutions, fancy talking. This is a slow precision. This is a prayer for peace. We are new at this endeavor, new at listening, new at hearing, new at taking enough time to honestly receive one another's stories. What is done cannot be undone. What is done next must now be done with care. We gather because we are hopeful, because we have visions and dreams of a brighter future. May the strength of this time together help us walk forward. May the wisdom of this experience help us to know our path. May we have the courage to return as often as necessary until our way is clear. May we have the perseverance together to see it through. May we cause it to be so. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Catherine. Gosh. So we are here today as a Justice Circle, and the worship team, the Friday worship team, has kind of been working on what needs to happen, just listening, what needs to happen. And so the invitation here is that the groups, and Janet, just welcome to you. We're so happy that you're here with us. And so I'll give a little bit more of an overview for Janet, since this is her first time with us. We've been organizing, kind of self-organizing around issues that we really care about and where we feel very called to. And those issues include everything from voting rights to equitable housing to movement building in the Episcopal Church. And we've been working kind of in teams around these issues every other week. And we wanted to take a moment today to share out with the whole group what has started to emerge in these teams as we've worked together. Really just seeing it as an opportunity to do some kind of cross-pollinating, because many of us actually are interested and involved in multiple issues. And of course, those issues are also so interconnected and interrelated. And so taking a moment to share what's kind of come up and seeing it really as an opportunity to just continue to build our own capacity to do the work of Jesus in the world, to bring forth healing and reconciliation and justice. So with that in mind, we are going to today, we're going to huddle, those teams are going to huddle for about 10 minutes just to touch base, Todd and Michelle have come up with a template, some questions. They're going to serve as kind of some guiding questions that those teams will respond to. Each team, so the huddle you'll be together for about 10 minutes. And then you'll come back and we'll be together as a whole group. And each one of those teams are going to have 5 minutes, just 5 minutes. And we're going to actually, Michelle is going to serve as the timekeeper. And so we're going to do that just to make sure that we're speaking the things that need to be spoken and making sure that we allow enough time to respond and to hear one another, just kind of listening for what is starting to kind of even bubble up as we report out. So that's kind of the flow for today.
Have you created the breakout rooms?
Yeah, I have created.
Okay, great.
And so what we're going to do is first, I think what I'll have us do is we'll move as we have been and kind of using this open space where everyone is co-host. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to first have us all go into the main lobby. So we're going to go from this room into another breakout room. We're all going to show up there together. And then I'm going to give a little bit direction before we go into the action teams. So I'll see you in just a minute in the main room. And just wait for me just for a minute before you leave into your team. Janet, just bear with us. And you're not going to lose us. We're not going to lose you.
I'm fine.
All right. Let's see. Here we go. Have to assign everybody. I feel like we've really hacked Zoom as we figured out how to do this. Moving in and out ourselves. All right, so here we go. Oh, Robin, you are, let's see, shoot, you're on phone, right?
Yeah, I am. But no,
I can't, let's see. Let me see if I can do, because I'm not able to make you co-host. So let me see if I can assign you there. I can't. Oh. See if I hear you.
Oh. Hi.
Okay. Sorry. No, that's right.
It's all good.
Yeah.
Not on phone anymore.
I think a couple of people, do we have everybody here? Yeah, a couple of people actually are already into the smaller rooms. But I think what I was just going to say is, as a reminder, I'm going to put in the chat the questions. Does everybody have the questions?
Yeah.
Today? Okay, I'll just put that in the chat because I'm not seeing everybody say yes. So just so you know what you're doing. So again, here's just the opportunity to get clear on what you want to share, and maybe who's going to do it as well. Just so you know exactly what you're going to do. Because again, you're only going to have, each team is going to have 5 minutes. So it's going to feel different than we normally feel where we're kind of in and out. It's going to be a lot more structured, y'all. So I'm just trying to give you a warning here. Yeah, here's the link to the chat for the questions, and you'll have 10 minutes. So Janet, just what we'll do is if you look down at the bottom of your screen, for those of you that know how to do this, feel free to go ahead. I'll just talk Janet through it a little bit. Go down to the bottom of your screen and hit breakout rooms. And when you do that, you will see several different options for rooms that you can join. And these rooms reflect the action teams that have been working together. So for example, you'll see voting rights, equitable housing, movement building in the Episcopal Church, creation care, interfaith organizing, and youth anti-racism and symbolic action. If any of those appeal to you and you want to learn more about what those teams have been up to and be part of their share out, feel free to join any of those rooms. And you can do it just by clicking which one you want to join. Or if you just want to stay in here with me for 10 minutes, feel free to do that too.
Amy, I can't find it at the bottom.
You can't find the breakout rooms?
It's like 4 little squares. So it's a, depending on what your screen shows, there's participants, chat, share screen, record, breakout rooms.
Nope, it's
I don't
not.
have it either. I don't have breakout rooms, and I have
Me
Pro,
neither.
so I have it all the time. So there's something.
Something
Mine
funky.
has record and then ask for help.
Okay,
Really?
Yeah.
that's weird. All right. Well, Miriam, I can move
may
you.
not
Yeah.
have upgraded your Zoom because
So I'm moving you to
upgrade.
youth anti-racism. Yes.
Yeah, I want to go to create the
Creation care.
patient care. Yeah.
Lisa, where do you want to go? Peacemaking?
You're unmuted. You're on mute, Lisa. We aren't very good at reading lips. We
Oh,
can't.
yeah, no, I'm back. No, I want to go to, I want peace building, but I can go there myself, but I want to make sure I wasn't the only one. I was seeing who was.
Okay. Libby,
join with somebody.
can you see the breakout room? Who else needs help here?
Yeah, I need help.
Just tell us.
Thank you. Oh, good. Then I'll join. Yes.
Jennifer, do you need help? Can you see the breakout rooms?
I'm fine. I'm going to sit tight since I haven't been.
Okay.
Here, I'll just listen to the reports.
Okay.
Okay.
Beautiful. I'm going to pause this.
But oops.
All right.
Welcome back, everybody.
That was quick.
Now, right?
Yeah.
Quick, I know. Let's see. Do we have everybody? I think so. It looks like we lost a couple people still joining us. Just wanting to call your attention to the fact that we are recording this. It feels like it's a good opportunity for us to kind of capture what's been happening collectively so that we can communicate it out more broadly. So I hit the record button, Catherine, just as you began, just as you opened us. So just wanting you all to know that. All right. So before we begin share out, one of the things I wanted to just kind of call us back to was this lens of appreciative inquiry. And so as we listen to these share outs, again, we're going to have a very structured way to do this, 5 minutes each. There are going to be a little bit of opportunity for immediate feedback. So ideas that you're struck with or questions that come up for you. So I think, as we listen to this, just offering up this appreciative inquiry as a lens for us to listen. I think, we kind of practiced that a little bit last week, and I'm not going to get into a lot of detail right now because I don't want to take away a lot of time. But the idea here with appreciative inquiry, Lisa had offered that up as a model for us to really kind of live into the dream. So listening for the dream, the strengths, the assets, the things that give us energy, following spirit. And so as you listen, just I think really pay attention to where are you finding energy? Where are you finding light and God? And I think as a way to just share feedback, either right now in the immediate moment, but also capture that, please. And you can speak to some of that in the chat. And also for sure, we're obviously a community. And so this is not the only opportunity for us to be connected and to share our ideas and everything with one another. So just wanting to lift that lens of appreciative inquiry up again here as we go into the sharing. So with that, we've got, it looks like 5 teams. We've got Equitable Housing, Creation Care, Interfaith Organizing, Youth Anti-Racism, and Peacemaking and Bridge Building that are going to be sharing out today based on how you all organized in the breakout rooms. And so I think just, who wants to start us off? And Michelle, you're the timekeeper, right? Were you going to like have some kind of timekeeper up on the screen? So we know? Okay. So maybe like a signal when we get to, I don't know, like what is going to be your signal to the team so that they know when their time is getting close?
Well, they can have a 1-minute warning or whatever they want, but yeah, we've got 5 minutes for share out.
So maybe, yeah, maybe a 1-minute warning would be good to give us, at least here in the beginning. Sometimes we just need it as we get going to kind of give us a sense of the rhythm. All right, who wants to start us off? Todd.
Well, I will say that in our group, first of all, we had to figure out kind of where we were, and that took us a little time.
Lista,
And then,
wait, Lista, I'm going to jump in here. Say who you are. Say the name of your
I'm
group.
sorry, it's Lissa Barker, and it was Ariel and Janet Snap and Libby who were in it. And
what team? I'm sorry.
Yeah, the team was the Interfaith, and we kind of merged for a couple of the groups because those, and anyway, we were trying to figure out what the scaffolding was. We really were trying to figure it out. And then we were identifying areas, both in Cincinnati and over on the eastern part of the diocese, kind of things that had been done and some ministries. We looked at things like Catch Court, which then not only acting in that ministry, but then what happened as a result of that ministry. For example, the food ministry out of Catch Court helped us all get cookie dough stuff that we then made for the prison ministry. So we were doing a lot of extension, and it was not essentially church based, but it was more faith-based. And the Kairos, of course, is a faith-based, but it's non-denominational. So that's, what do you think, Ariel, everybody?
Yeah, we were just trying to find our footing.
Yeah.
And we made a distinction between direct service ministries that are interfaith and advocacy. And I was asking about advocacy goals because the Ohio Council of Churches is having their policy retreat on the 13th of January. So I wanted to know what advocacy goals people had. But we ran out of time.
The pieces we have with the Faith and Community Alliance and there are several Episcopalians in that group in Cincinnati, and we act as a clearinghouse for information as well as a town hall. We're talking about issues around racial inequity, particularly, as well as social justice.
Wonderful. Is there anything else that you all want to say? You've got a couple more minutes. Just as you've been working together, I'm curious, like, what is your dream? Like when you think about that and you've articulated, it sounds like you've done a lot of kind of landscape, like what's been happening and what's been the impact of those efforts. I'm curious, like what's come up for you all in terms of what is your dream for interfaith organizing as it relates to becoming beloved community?
The dream, I think, has been around working together, focusing on our connectedness across organizations and across groups, as opposed to what makes us different, but working on the things that make us similar: food insecurity, gun violence, those kinds of things. The dream is to lift everybody up and not leave anybody behind. Do you guys think that's?
Yeah, I think that I think the other thing is the fact that we're not the ones that have to do it. We have alone. We have to look at what's there, and we have to be able to determine how our participation makes a difference, rather than saying that we have to set up our own action or organization.
Right.
And some of the partnerships are with Forward Movement, Church Next, Poor People's Campaign, as well as other organizations that we've already indicated.
And Equation in Cincinnati, and then a much older group of people, the Metropolitan Area Religious Coalition and Faith Community Alliance and the Amos Project. So there are a lot of different groups gearing up, but we don't know yet I don't know yet what their policy priorities are for 2021.
Mm.
We need to find out. And
Some of 'em have
secular
not
groups
been as-
like Ohio and the Ohio Association of Food Banks and Legal Aid, like what are they championing this year?
Beautiful. Thank you.
Policy Matters Ohio.
Mm. Thank you all. So just a little bit of time here, maybe just a couple minutes. Michelle, help with the time there for me. Any immediate thoughts? Again, this is not a time for us to capture everything for us, but just like wanting to give a little bit of space for whatever is just striking us right now in the moment that we don't want to lose. And also we can put it in the chat as well. But any thoughts?
Yeah, when Todd shares out the equitable housing top lines that we discussed, a common theme is that there are a lot of people with their hands in this pie, but none of it's organized, and strategic partnerships seems to be another common element from what they just shared.
Yes.
I wonder if you all have assigned or self-chosen particular areas that you're going to investigate, because you were talking about, well, we aren't sure what their priorities are, if you've divvied that up.
No, we didn't get that far.
We didn't have time to do that.
But I hear in your question, Michelle, maybe that's something to explore. How do we start to resource as we try to still continue to learn and discover? Again, I kind of go back to this appreciative inquiry in a way, if you look at it, not now, but later. We're kind of in the discovery and dreaming phase right now, probably is what I sense it where these teams are. So discovery. Any other thing you all that strikes you in response to this team?
I think the interconnectedness resonates quite with me, at least. I'm sure that's and others. I think the future of work like this depends on working with one another. We're not competitors. And to some extent, I think some churches tend to still keep the walls pretty much in place. And I'm not sure that's the future or the best thing for the future. So I really love the word connectedness. I've written that one down.
Yes. Thank you, Jim, for lifting that up. Barry, it's kind of tied to what you were saying too around strategic partnerships, even just bridging across those efforts. Awesome. Well, thank you, team Interfaith Organizing. Yeah, thank you. Just so you know, not only are we recording, but I'm also just kind of capturing some notes as well. All right, who's next? Todd, I saw your hand go up earlier.
And thanks, Barry, for throwing me under the bus, but okay. This is the Equitable Housing team. It's Barry, Kathy Mank, and myself. A few other folks have joined in from time to time. Regarding what's the dream, you'll see the need for connectivity just amongst ourselves, let alone whatever outside organizations there are. But we came up with everyone has access to education, employment, and affordable housing, basically a sustainable livelihood. What we've learned in our reflections are many organizations are addressing housing. They are disjointed or addressing very narrow or very broad, not connected to each other necessarily. One of the challenges being involved with a couple of different nonprofits is the nonprofits and these grassroots organizations tend to be very parochial about their funding sources. They don't want their donor lists shared with others. They don't want others to necessarily know how they got a grant from the Bezos Day One Fund, et cetera. That's a barrier to engagement. We'll reiterate what the previous team said about there are more organized, larger movements in the field of equitable housing. The challenge is who is the right one or a few to join. How do we research and engage these and make sure that we're engaging one that truly has, I don't know how to describe it, doesn't have any skeletons in the closet about their founding or their mission or what they're really trying to do. We mentioned the lack of connectivity between orgs. We also mentioned that, or discussed the fact that, and Barry, maybe you figured out the word now, but basically a lack of knowledge by the general population and may result in a lack of compassion. You still see things about, why don't they just get a job? Or even in the pandemic, why don't they just get a job? Why don't they invest their savings in the stock market like everybody else to get rich? And it's like, okay, yeah, they don't get it. So how do you address that aspect of our society?
Yeah, apathy was the word I couldn't find, Todd.
Apathy, there you go. I got a nice house, I got mine.
Right.
The heck with the rest of you.
Yep. That's all the further we got, so we'll give our 2 minutes back.
Yeah.
You yield.
Yeah, I yield my 2 minutes back to the floor.
Thank you both. Well, so just a little bit of space here. Anything immediately strikes anyone, or what's coming up? What questions, ideas?
So this apathy that you're mentioning, or not wanting to know or get involved, reminds me of the whole question about reparations. Like, if we start talking about reparations, are we going down a slippery slope where we're going to lose all of our things? And I think it's just really wonderful to tell stories about how people are joining hands and tackling a situation bravely, and it's getting better, so that people realize, well, there is something I can do as well as I damn well better if I'm going to be a person of faith with any integrity.
Yeah, and the other reason why people should care is there are societal benefits. It's not a win-lose situation. It's a win-win situation if we look at it correctly.
Mm-hmm. That's right. It's how you frame it.
You know,
So
one of the things that I have been really focused on and thinking about a lot has been this whole issue of radicalization and re-radicalization, and how involvement in some of these activities can help with re-radicalizing people to the way of love, away from the way of hate. And I wonder how I'm just hearing now about a lot of nasty stuff on the right side, you know, the hate side and the social media and stuff. Because I have to admit, I don't really do Facebook and stuff, but hearing a lot about how people are trying to retain the radicalization that happened. And I wondered if some of what we should be doing in our justice circle should be looking at how we re-radicalize people over to the way of love, rather and move them out of the hate.
That's powerful, Lisa.
Yeah.
That question came up at our place not long ago, and I talked about mass communications, TV,
Okay.
newspapers, things like that.
We're gonna, sorry, we're culling in.
Oh.
We're culling in. That was 2 minutes.
Ah.
We're culling in because we all have a lot of, we want to get through everyone. So.
Yeah, Jim, just so you don't lose your thoughts, stick it, if you will, just at least a couple of words there in the chat so we can capture it, so we can get back to it.
I'll put that on. Thank you.
Yeah, I hear the energy, Lisa, around this idea of radicalizing toward the way of love. And so thank you for speaking to that. All right. Yeah. Oof, okay. Who's next, y'all? All right, Robin.
I'll do creation care.
Okay.
I was sort of the note taker. So in terms of our dream, we talked about a dream of equal opportunity for people and nature to be in harmony and with balance restored the way God intended it. And just for a visual image, sort of a worldwide Garden of Eden, or in Isaiah, the lion lying down with the lamb. I mean, you know, that kind of an image. so that was sort of the dream that we had. We talked about the need for increasing understanding of how it's important for, we talked about the need to do work so that more people would understand the link between advancing earth justice and advancing people justice, if you will. I mean, that we're how interconnected we all really are. And understanding, again, I mean, this is a theme that's come up with others, that just because all's right in my world doesn't mean that it's all right in somebody else's world, where they're having to breathe, toxic fumes and have lead in their water and, all the other kinds of things that happen because of the way we have not been taking care of the earth and how that's inequitable right now. So just helping people make that connection between earth justice and beloved community in the sense of social justice and so forth. And then, what needs to change? So if we want this to happen, what needs to change? And what am I doing, either knowingly or unknowingly, to contribute to problems? And then sort of the flip side of that is, what could I be doing to reverse this? One of the big obstacles we think is just feeling overwhelmed, in the sense that we're talking about, governments and large corporations and, taking on huge entities that it's just really overwhelming. And so, remembering that God is in charge and that we're not doing it alone was one of the things that we talked about. And there's just, again, that notion of things are good for me right now and I don't want to give it up. I don't want to change. I'm distant from it, so I'm not aware of it, that kind of thing. That seems to be a common theme. I'm going to let Catherine speak to the strategies in terms of moving forward.
Awesome, thanks, Robin. Yeah, there are a couple of things. I think strategy, an important strategy for us to think about is listening to other voices, especially within our church, because there are a ton of secular organizations doing Christian care work, but we're not a secular organization. We're the church, right? And so we frame all of our work in the gospel, and that means our motivation is different and it looks different. But there are, even within the Episcopal Church, a lot of people who are working specifically on Christian care and on environmental justice, especially the UBE here in our diocese. Amy, thanks for reminding me about the focus of the Absalom Jones symposium, may be the wrong word, but on the 13th of February, specifically focused on environmental justice. So just making sure that we are strategically focused and thinking about and asking other people within our church who are already doing the work. But additionally, there'll be a proposal going forward for diocesan council on February 6th, asking for their approval to officially launch a Christian care task force in our diocese, which will hopefully become a Christian care commission, specifically focused on formation, justice, renewable energy, sustainability, launching Christian care initiatives and providing resources in our parishes and things like that going forward, which will give us access to resources in the diocese, and will also kind of heighten the work of creation care. And it's the proposal is specifically actually worded to frame our work in terms of beloved community. So I anticipate that we will get from diocesan kind of whatever approval we need, but also the access to some of the things I just mentioned, so we can really push these forward. And then specifically within that task force, really hoping to circle back and kind of diversify our ranks and start asking other people, you know, how can we help what you're already doing, and what work can be done here that is really going to meet the needs of people all around our diocese. So that's kind of it so far. Robin, did I capture the second piece?
Awesome. Woo, y'all. That is a lot. That's amazing. That's so exciting to know that there's this work ahead and launching this proposal with diocesan council. So I'm so excited to hear how that goes, and that it's rooted in becoming beloved community. So all these things again are connected. Yes. All right. Well, I'm going to I think because of time, if there are any immediate thoughts or responses to all that was shared around creation care, clearly there's a lot moving there. Please drop those in the chat. And just also know that we're connected. So we can reach out to one another outside of this space. But I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and move to the next team, unless there's just something that people are just dying to speak to the whole group in just this moment of witnessing.
And I'll add that I can share the proposal if anybody's interested in reading it.
Yes.
It's short.
Please. Yeah, I just want to say, I think one thing that came up for me is that you all said that I had not heard other teams say is just that the knowing that this work is rooted in the gospel, and that difference in motivation shapes then what it looks like. And so I just appreciated that and wanted to reflect that back. All right. Well, who's next, y'all?
I'll go.
Sweet, really.
I'm in the youth anti-racism group. And over the course of the last few months, we've talked about a lot of different ideas, both on the parish level and different ways that we're hoping to engage youth. But I think that our dreams and our intentions and the things that are making us most excited are really coalescing around this one idea of a council of youth that works at the diocesan level. I think that our excitement from this comes from both an idea to not just teach youth about the importance of advocacy and activism, but also get them started on that journey and make them leaders and activists in their own right at the diocesan level. And so the way that we've started this process is, luckily in our group we have both Reverend Phyllis and also Chris, who have experience in these kinds of councils in their own past. And so they have an idea of how physically this sort of thing could happen and what sort of things are possible, because they both come from really great programs. And so we met with the diocesan formation team and have talked to them about what we're hoping to do and gotten their support, and we're working with Christopher Richardson, and we've started the conversation about what ways they can support us, or what ways both of our goals align, so that we can be working on certain projects together. And we've also talked about, I think this is maybe one of the next steps for us, meeting with Amy Boyd and the other leaders at the Proctor Center to use both the Proctor Center as a location, but also as Proctor Camp as a diocesan level space where the youth gather. And so that's sort of the trajectory we're on. In the immediate future, we have discussed potentially, in terms of stumbling blocks, but also resources. We've talked a lot about the reality that we're all online at this moment. And so the challenge of not being able to gather physically, but also because our diocese is very physically large, it offers us the opportunity to potentially have easier gatherings for people who would have trouble physically attending things. So what ways we can utilize online presence to pull in as many youth as we can. And so reasonably, other than trying to nail down exactly what we're hoping the youth will do, although of course we need their presence to be the leaders that we're hoping for them to be, we're thinking of ways that we can begin, where we can kickstart this community of youth to feel like a team. And one of the things that we have talked about is potentially doing an anti-racism virtual pilgrimage.
Yeah.
I think that you guys might need to remind me of the time. I think that there was one that specifically works around Holy Week time. So that would be in like a couple of months. So we'd see if we could do it then, but if it needed to be delayed, doing some sort of anti-racism virtual pilgrimage to bring some youth together and sort of inspire that unity amongst youth across the diocese on the focus of anti-racism work. And I think that we're just really excited generally about the idea of youth being leaders and activists in the diocese, but also becoming anti-racist themselves, but also starting to teach, being able to be the leaders and the teachers to younger youth as well, so that they grow up into that space prepared for them. And that will become a running goal. We have 30 seconds. If I missed anything, hit me up.
Wow.
Yes. That's awesome. Yeah.
Marilee, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Marilee, have you talked with Christopher any about his trip a year and a half or so ago with our kids? I forget the name of it. It was to Selma, Alabama. They went to MLK, and there was a couple other stops like that down south. It was a bus trip.
I actually saw their presentation on it, which is where I got my St. Mark's.
Okay.
Yeah. It was really moving. The youth were so excited and ready for anti-racism work. And so I think that that's part of our inspiration, is that we know that programs like that really are inspiring the youth to be active and excited to do work. And if we can create a space where they can do that, then I think
you got the right guy there.
Yeah.
I just want to chime in with how wonderful it is to hear people saying not that children are the future of the church, but the children are the church now. Mm-hmm. That they don't have to wait to be leaders, and that we can be learning from them all the time. And as somebody who came up through music, the children lead worship in music, and it's not that they get up and get cute and get an applause at the end of their little song. It's that the children are taught to lead worship, and so this is another way for children to lead, and I think it's beautiful.
Well, and I don't think you have to go to Alabama. I think that telling the stories in locations in Southern Ohio of racism and anti-racism would be a very powerful thing for you guys to bring to light, and would fit the other work that we're doing really well. Telling those stories right where we live in our communities will really hold us accountable and not make it something far away like the story of Anne Frank.
The Underground Railroad was very, very active in in Ohio. And there are a lot of places you could go. I mean, there are plaques on the OSU campus where there were stops for the Underground Railroad.
But for living people to tell their stories about what happened to them and what how they're changing things would also really be challenging and edifying.
National Underground Railroad Freedom Center is a wonderful resource, and it's right here.
Yes, thank you.
Michelle is doing her job as timekeeper today. Thank you, Michelle. Yes, thank you. Also, just like all the possibility here and the connection with the story sharing work too that we're doing and we're going to be doing. So that's really exciting. Thanks you all for sharing all that out. All right, I think that we've only got the peacemaking, peace building and bridge building group left. Who's going to share out from that group?
I will, but that was amazing, and I don't want to follow merrily. Set a high bar. I also want to speak a little bit to when we've started doing the peacemaking circle is newer than some of our other circles. This one was launched, I believe, in October as like a leading up to the election. We had really started talking about peacemaking and bridge building. Prior to that, every Justice Circle, I had participated in the movement building within the Episcopal Church. And I believe that everybody from movement building, and like this is my observation, I'm not sure if it's totally true, but everybody from the movement building jumped over to peace building. So I think in some ways, those two circles are linked. I also know that when we were doing the, when I was participating more in the movement building, there was a lot of conversation around the story sharing project, which we launched at convention. So in some ways, I also wonder, we now have this story sharing design team, and my personal sense is that that circle has kind of taken on the work that Justice Circle had been in conversation around. So I just wanted to name that for the larger group as well. And now I will do my best to summarize. Today it was myself and Lisa Hughes in conversation together in the peacemaking and bridge building. We also have had before Libby Crawford and Ann Brack and a couple others, I think, who I am now completely forgetting. So I am sorry for those who I know that I'm leaving out. When we talked about what is God's dream right now, for me, I think that is valuing relationships above all else. I think that that's how we really get, like, what does peace look like? I think it is valuing relationships between everybody. And we named a couple things like Democrats, Republicans, clergy, lay people, rural and urban, like there are different divides that we're trying to bridge. And I think kind of all of that. A specific thing that we named that I think is also important is money. And I think Todd kind of mentioned this when he was saying, like, people don't want to share resources, people don't want to share the email list, and how did you get that grant? And I think in Lisa had mentioned this idea about, like, what if the diocese just has, like, this is what every single church is doing. And when she mentioned that once, the response was, but then we might lose members. People might move their pledges from our church to that church, and we can't have that. So I think there's also this scarcity mindset, or this very, like, I want to say individualism, but at like the parish level individualism, rather than seeing ourselves as the body of Christ and like reaching across those bridges. So I guess I've also started to speak to some of the challenges. Another challenge that we named, that Lisa named specifically, who wants this? Who wants to do this? And if we're creating, so let me back up. The group did a lot of brainstorming around what would it look like if we like pulled together all of these bridge building resources. Libby contributed a lot with her librarian background around, like, how do we create this list in a way that's accessible to individuals, to parishes, to families, and does this look like courses or books, or like what kind of resources can we gather to then equip people to be peacemakers and bridge builders? And that kind of brought up the question of, like, who is this for? And I think another challenge that I see is kind of twofold. I've observed parishioners saying, like, oh, I really want to do this, but I can't lead it. And this, like, shying away from our own leadership abilities, or asking the clergy only to be those leaders. And I think that a lot of clergy are overwhelmed, especially in the pandemic. So in my mind, this, like, how do we pull resources is kind of twofold of, our clergy are tired, so how can we help resource them And how can we help regular old people like me feel like leaders and equipped to like do this work so that we're not just relying on our clergy, because we are all ministers of Christ, right? Let's see, Lisa, are there things I've left out?
Well, our time is up, but I'm.
Oh, sorry.
I'll put stuff in there. I'll send stuff and put it in the Justice Circle, and we'll talk about it if there is anything. How's that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, we've got a couple of minutes here just for thoughts and ideas. So if there's something else that you all want to share, please go ahead and speak to that.
And Nicole, I wanted to respond. And we have this in our
Wait, Jim, just a second. Lisa, go ahead.
I was just going to share one thing, because to me, it's a big deal. I do peace news and peace dialogue, but for the next 2 months, on January 30th is the day Mahatma Gandhi was killed. On April 4th is the day Martin Luther King was killed. There are a couple of websites, and I can't put them in the chat right now, but I'll put them in the Justice Circle. 64 days of nonviolence. And each day, and one of the websites has activities for adults, for children, some great videos. And the other one, there's a booklet there. So if you want to do a diary yourself, it starts day 1, January 30th is courage. And they talk about courage, and then you can, kind of scroll through. So I will put both of those websites in the Justice Circle. That for me is, I believe, me and a couple of other really smart people that I've read their quotes. Peace begins with each of us and what we do in our lives. And I think it encompasses all the things that some of the other committees are doing.
Thank you. That's brilliant, Lisa. Yes, I look forward to seeing that.
I will do that.
Yeah, thank you. It makes me think, Nicole, you were just saying, like, how do we start to see each of us? And Lisa, you are leading peace building, peacemaking work in important ways. So for all of us to understand who we are, each of us. So I'm glad that you ended with just that invitation around that, the 64 days of peace building. Jim, did you have something that you wanted to add?
Yeah, Nicole, you talked about stuff that may turn a parishioner off, and that's true. We never did it that way. We've always used to do it. And I think, on the other hand, if we reach out to a broader community, not our walls, go outside of our walls to the local community, you might actually attract people to the church who are interested in that kind of work. They probably would be younger people, maybe not, but I wouldn't be surprised. But okay, yeah, a few may say, okay, that's not for me. But we may, if we share our story in the community where we are, in Arlington, in our case, whoa, they're doing that kind of stuff over there. And that appeals to me.
Thank you.
So they trot on over and get involved. And now that's not a fast process, but because we're not giving away steak knives when they come. But
thank you, Jim. Thank you.
Jim,
steak knives don't sound very peaceful, especially if you're the steak.
Ariel.
Thank you, Ariel.
I don't know, Ariel. Oh my gosh. Well, Jim, clearly God has been working with you with communication. So I just want to say, and I think, again, when you think about communication and what it means to tell our story, it brings us back to this whole piece about remembering who we are, sharing that story with one another bravely, and then telling this story more broadly in evangelism to the rest of the world in terms of who we are as followers of Jesus. And so for me, those are some themes that are coming through here. Also, I'm hearing a lot of stuff around interconnectedness and how can we, root ourselves in the way of love. And a lot of it has to start with us. Like Todd, you said that, like the connectivity, even just among us, among your team, and then knowing that it has to start there before we can then bring it out into the world. The rooting in the gospel, I think, was an important piece. What other things that we want to just lift up that we noticed going through this process and kind of listening to these share outs? Just opening up a little bit of space around that. Because I'm going to be honest, y'all, I just kind of want to dance. So, but what else? What else do we want to lift up here?
So one of the things that we have talked about is about being a resource. And some of the groups have really nailed that down. And I wonder, okay, for those who have participated in my work to do, there are punch lists, right? These are things that you can do to promote anti-racism, supporting Black businesses. These are some Black-owned businesses, finding them in your area. For creation care, what are things, and it sounds silly, but little practical things that feel like the cookies are on a low enough shelf that, because it does feel overwhelming when we talk about large industries. Well, what can I do here?
Well,
in
but
my
I think
little house?
it's both and. So yesterday we were talking in the Faith Communities Go Green of Green Umbrella about advocacy, and we talked about two kinds of advocacy, horizontal and vertical. The horizontal was walking the talk. It's as you say, you've got an electric car, or you don't buy things in plastic bags anymore. That's walking the talk. Another example is the diocese divesting in fossil fuels, which they've done some of, but they still have more to do. And a third, but vertical advocacy would be like saying, all right, these chemical plants in Eastern Ohio have asked for a permit to hollow out salt storage places for their, for fracking, storing fossil fuel. Like, there are systemic things that affect people and especially hurt people of color. And we have to be talking about those systemic things as well as holding ourselves accountable.
And I think I'll pick that ball up, Ariel, while you put it down. And Michelle, I'm not sure I have a full answer to the question that you raised, but I tend to think that a lot of people know the small things that they can do because it's coming at us from other non-Christian organizations. And I tend to think that to frame our work in the gospel, we do have to look at low-hanging fruit, but possibly it's low-hanging fruit about where the church is and where our parish buildings are. And maybe we haven't thought about what's the low-hanging fruit in that area and why theologically our churches need to represent the gospel. I mean, from most basic sense. Does that make sense? I'm not saying it's not worthwhile to tell people small things that they can do. I just hesitate because I don't want them to think, I don't want anybody to think that that's all they need to do. Does that make sense? And that there is more work of framing our work in scripture and in the gospel, and what do our church buildings represent? And so that's sort of what I wrestle with in my head. And I'm not sure I have an answer, but I just want to throw that out. Yes, both and the Anglican way. Yes, and I do know there are many, many people who are starting at the very beginning of this particular Christian care journey and probably do need to be motivated to make some individual changes. And to root things in the gospel, it tends to start in the church building as well. Like, I don't know, from the pulpit and teaching the theology and so on. So
yes, exactly. Right. Are we using styrofoam cups at coffee hour as if we were ever present to each other in coffee hour anyway?
Right.
Well, and I can speak to that as some of the basic space where we started at All Saints as well. So, and we just took on the mindset that we were going to pretend like we were a church that cared about the environment, and then eventually we would morph into that. And I think slowly it's happened.
Yeah. I think to build on that too, that in terms of what Ariel was saying, that you know, we can start our community gardens and all that kind of stuff, but if the federal policy is such that we're subsidizing monoculture farming and discouraging regenerative agriculture, then we need to at least provide a period of time when we're, you know, supporting both and then weaning people off of the one that's not sustainable. But that's a policy issue, and it's a money issue at a very large scale. So,
and we're talking about advocating with integrity, you know, that we're also making changes, and we're not just pointing the finger at policymakers, but we're doing what we can do both as advocates and in our life habits.
Right.
I put in the chat room environmental working group. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it, but it's a really good website to go to because they have all kinds of booklets. You can look up any food you want to. It'll look at the processing of it, the nutrition of it. Plus they have booklets for cosmetics. It's a really good, robust site for what creation care in terms of choices and what's being done. And they also send petitions you can sign and that kind of thing. They're really good. I thought I'd say that one since you're all having that conversation.
Thanks, Lisa. And I wanted to mention, Amy, to your question about what are we really seeing. One thing that I see for all, this is certainly not limited to Christian care, but the strong overlap of advocacy and story sharing for all of the things that we're talking about. And that really becomes those two things are very powerful tools. Advocacy, kind of that reaching out to address some of the policy and systemic issues, and the story sharing is a powerful way to engage people in our diocese. And what I said about pretending as if, I think that really applies to every issue in every parish, that you just kind of start pushing, you take your small group and you push the ball forward, and it has a way of gaining enough momentum and time to grab the people who live in the space of apathy, who are not against your particular issue, but it's not in the forefront of their mind. You start telling those stories and you start moving that ball forward, and then you start to see some momentum. So not just with Christian care, but with all the things we're talking about.
I don't remember what the question was, Amy. So can you tell me again? Because I have something I want to share, and I just don't want it to be off. Because you're recording, and so this is going in
the invitation
on the internet. I'm just kidding.
The invitation was just, what do we notice? As we've shared, from this process. So I'm sure whatever's on your heart and mind is the right thing to share.
Okay, yeah, it's on. And I'm going to turn off my video just because we've had some internet problems this week. I have been reading Howard Thurman, the Jesus and the Disinherited. So if any of you have read that book, can you just raise your hand if you've read that? Okay, all right, thank you. It just helps me understand what I need to say. So I had never heard of Howard Thurman to where I would notice that I'd heard of him until these recent years of being involved in this work, which just goes to tell you something about how jacked up the church is that I didn't know about Howard Thurman. So I decided I'm just create my own curriculum of reading for my own edification and for my going deeper into the work of dismantling racism. And I'm telling you, I just want to I implore you, if you haven't read it, read it. And if you have read it, read it again, because I know I'm going to be living with this. I'm going to be starting actually a Night Owl book club at 10 p.m. one night a week. And so I'm starting with that book because it's everything that we're doing. It's everything that we're talking about. And it just makes me want to think about it and talk about it all the time, about who Jesus was, how the Christian church has completely co-opted and misunderstood and negated that, and how we have to, so the question is, how can people of color, how can marginalized people, how can people who were slaves be Christians? That's the basic question that he's wrestling with through this book. And what does scripture say about that? I mean, it has opened up so many things for me, but pertaining specifically to the actions that we're taking, I feel like if we are not every moment asking, where is Jesus in this? And every moment asking, I've heard this, who needs this? Why are we doing this? Because we cannot let ourselves go down the slippery slope of white saviorism. We cannot let ourselves forget that every single thing that we do in our actions has to be through the lens of our faith, and the right lens, like a clear lens, a crystal clear lens of who was Jesus, what was Jesus about, and how are we going to help people see that is how we're coming to them as we advocate for them. So I'm just really excited about everything that I heard today. And I just want to keep us on the path Jesus, of following Jesus. Like, I just don't ever want us to forget that that's why we're doing this, and that we're doing this for the people who can't do it for themselves, who can't, you know, be at this meeting, who can't speak for themselves. So I guess I'm just fired up, but I'm also fired up in the fact that it has to be Jesus-centered. It has to be gospel.
Yes, because we're doing, I would add, Miriam, to that, thank you. We're doing it for those who can't be there for themselves. And also we're ultimately doing it for ourselves, because the only one we can save is ourselves. And so it's that. So always coming back to, to Jesus and why we're following Jesus. And I'm up for the Night Owl book club.
Miriam, what's the name of the book again?
It's Howard Thurman's Jesus and the Disinherited.
All right. Thank you.
Text, yeah. All right, couple more minutes here. I just want to affirm that a couple of you are like, oh, there's so much energy. Can we get back into our breakout rooms? And so I think maybe it feels like we should stay as a whole group. Again, just kind of giving us an opportunity to continue to hear. But I think an invitation, if you want to stay just a few minutes later and you want to get back into your small group to just huddle again, we can do that. So know that, you know, I can stay for longer. So if you're wanting to get back in your group, we can make that happen after we close. Yeah.
Amy, can I say something?
Please.
Hi, everybody. I didn't join a group because I have not been here enough to do to contribute as much as you have this morning. I'm talking about common themes through every team, every group that spoke this morning. And that the common theme that I'm picking up on is awareness that there are so many other people and groups doing the same things, but not willing to share, but not willing to partner, not willing to collaborate, not willing to come together to make a bigger impact on what it is you're trying to do. And I heard that in every single group that reported out this morning. And I began to think about how our culture leads us down that pathway, where we are thinking about how can I win and somebody else lose, versus how can we win?
Right.
And we've all heard all the conversation around the big lie coming out of the political process we just went through. And I'm sorry to take us there, but our culture has really nurtured a lot of big lies that keeps us in this silo, that keeps us in this blinders like wish to do what I need to do to win. So what are some of those other big lies? Who decided that capitalism is good and socialism is evil?
The capitalists.
Yeah.
Who don't want you to unionize and don't want you.
Who decided that conservative is good and liberal is evil?
Mm-hmm.
We have a mechanism that takes us down a pathway and takes us away from coming together and working together for the betterment of humankind.
Right.
And somehow, some way, we've got to expose those big lies and stop with the name calling and the demonization of things that keep us away from doing big things. So I'm just going to throw that out and have you think about that.
I think we have to expose the lie, but I don't think we start by using the language that makes everybody react with their usual knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah, it's the language. It's the language that has been set up to take us down that pathway. So just something I'm observing as being off to the side instead of being inside the group.
Right.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you.
Yes. And I think in some ways what we've been doing together is practicing unlearning that lie and knowing ourselves that that lie is not true, and that through our own relationships, I mean, even just the modeling of these groups today, understanding that each one of these things are truly connected and that everything overlaps. And so I think part of the unlearning that lie and exposing that lie is, yeah, the language can be triggery, but like even just our experience of the truth of how we are actually all one in the body of Christ helps us. It gives us courage to know, well, first of all, to see the lie, but then to practice a different way, practice that way of love.
So sisterhood and brotherhood, and I'm just thinking of all the movies that make us empathize with each other, with the situation of people who we thought were very different from us. So how are we building sisterhood and brotherhood the way we have it in this group, so that more people in our society recognize people who they previously feared as their niece, their uncle, their sister, their aunt, their beloved grandmother?
Yeah, that's it, Ariel, isn't it? Because it is, and it was mentioned multiple times, it is all founded on relationship. Our relationship to Christ, our relationship to Christ in one another.
Right. So we recognize each other as family, and we stand up for each other because we love each other and we've got each other's back.
Well, if you've read the Book of Joy, a lot of you have, but I remember at the very, very, very end of it, that's what Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama say. Mm-hmm. That's the summary of their book. It's all about relationship. I thought that was wonderful, especially reading their stories and how they were enjoying each other.
And I lifted this up last week, but I'll say it again. It's a very small but doable thing. It's called Braver Angels. I signed up for this just on a whim. You get paired in a one-on-one conversation with somebody who's very different from you. They have black-white conversations. They have rural and urban. And the one I signed up for is red-blue, because I thought that would really challenge me. And it did. It gives you a structured conversation to listen to somebody who is really different from you and not argue. Can I repeat? It's very difficult, but we've had one conversation out of two, and it was just a good exercise in relationship. And Braver Angels also does some kind of group workshops, or you could listen to a conversation as well. But it was good practice, at least for an area of challenge for me, to not fight, argue, want to be right. So just throw that out there as a possibility for people. Practical application of what we're talking about.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just lifting up there, Catherine, just the challenge and that discomfort of being with folks that are kind of calling you into your growing edge, how that's the gift for us. And so I think that's like what we kind of continue to practice, is this like being in the discomfort, being in what feels hard, knowing that that's where the healing is and the transformation is. So you all, thank you so much. I'm aware of our time. And so I wanted to just bring us to a close here. And I don't know, again, if you're like me, I'm just like wanting to dance. I almost want a dance party with y'all. So I think, I don't know, I can't do the early morning 6 a.m., but maybe we might need to do like a late night, I don't know, a dance party. I think we just need to, but I know we got to close today. And then again, just for those of you interested in huddling back with your teams, know that you can do that. So just stay on for a little bit after. But yeah, so Libby, is it you that's offering up our closing? So thank you all so much for all the work that your teams have been doing.
I wrote this before this group today. Most holy, earth maker, pain bearer, life giver, mother and father of us all, we thank you for the work this day. We thank you for the fourfold path. God, in our truth telling for all your beings. God, in our dreaming of a better world for all your children. God, in our repairing the systems that are broken. God, in our practicing the way of love. God, in our work to do. Lift the veil from our eyes that we may see with your eyes. Strengthen and protect us as we go on our way to do the work, for your way is the way of love. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Libby.
Libby, would you share that with us later so we can offer that up in the harvest? Thank you so much. Amen. Amen.
Great meeting.